Welcome to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the PulpNet, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Online at thepulp.net. In this Pulp Event podcast, Henry G. Franke moderates a panel discussing Beyond the Farthest Star, a classic science fiction novel restored. The panel features Christopher Paul Carey and Cathy Wilbanks. Henry is the editor of the Burroughs Bulletin. Christopher is Director of Publications at Edgar Rice Burroughs Inc., and Cathy is Vice President of Operations there. The panel was part of ERBfest, held in conjunction with PulpFest. This event was recorded on Friday, August 20, 2021, at PulpFest 2021 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Henry begins.
All right, again, hopefully you all can hear me. Again, I'm Henry Franke, editor of the Burroughs Bibliophiles. This will be a short panel on Beyond the Farthest Star, the restored edition. Our panel members are Cathy Wilbanks, who's the Vice President of Operations at ERB Incorporated, and Christopher Paul Carey, who's the Director of Publishing at Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. And as hopefully you know by now, Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated has been pursuing a pretty rigorous publishing program on a number of fronts with stories and author and uniformed editions of Burroughs' own originals. And one of those stories which has a unique treatment is Beyond the Farthest Star we just talked about, which again Burroughs completed 2 novelettes. And those are the stories that have been published ever since Canaveral Press put them out in Tales of Three Planets and then all the subsequent paperback editions. But then we found out that what's been published all these years for especially the first novelette is not what Burroughs wrote completely. It was excised and edited. And Cathy, I'll ask you first. When did you all first realize that in fact Burroughs' original story didn't see print?
We actually, Christopher asked me to pull the manuscript out of our archives. So when we were looking at it in the office, he's used it as a basis for a lot of the universe. As he's moved forward with expanding the canon, he's been using that because it's such a great world and it's been untapped. So basically, it provides a great starting point and for a lot of creativity. And he is, as everybody knows, very creative. So we started to compare what we had already seen here in the office versus what the manuscript showed and the Blue Book, and we realized there's a lot of significant changes in it. So Christopher started to dig in a lot more, and we thought, you know what, we need to restore this. There's significant changes. It's a lot. So it provided a great opportunity.
Yeah, I took the photocopy of the original main typescript home one weekend, and that's when I really realized it, because I went through the whole book in a weekend, comparing line by line, and I marked it up all on paper, and I brought it in like the next Tuesday, I think, the next time I was in the office, and showed it to Jim and Cathy, and I'm like, we need to do this. I mean, we were thinking about it before, but I'm like, and it needs to be a restored edition. It's not just going to be a reprint of the old, Canaveral Press text or the Ace Books text. So.
Now, Richard A. Lupoff was the editor of Canaveral Press, although many people forget that Canaveral Press had started publishing Burroughs before he was the editor. So a few books came out before he was the editor, but I believe he was the editor for this one. Do you know why, who obviously got original manuscripts for other stories, didn't have it for this one?
So from what I could tell, we have a copy, file copies of the pulp magazines of just about all of ERB's pulps in our archives. And so I pulled that, I had Cathy pull that, and I went and you can actually see pencil marks on it where I believe it's Holly's handwriting. Hulbert Burroughs went through and he sort of marked it up, and he's like, make this the forward, and like, because I think there were some minor textual things of like the headings and things like that he was pointing out, and I think they made a copy of that. I think we have the original here, and they must have made us some kind of copy of that and sent that to Richard Lupoff. That's just a supposition, but it does follow how it appeared when it appeared in Tales of Three Planets. So I think that they didn't send it to him, whereas they did send him the typescript. They must have sent him the typescript of Part 2, Tango Returns. So he didn't have it. So for whatever reason, they were just like, well, it's already been published. Here it is. So ERB often would go back and when the pulp editions, after the pulp editions came out, the serializations, and he would collect them into a book form, as Henry was talking about earlier, and he would often revert them to his manuscript text. There are some particular books that are significantly different. Lost on Venus is one of them. If you look at the ERB text, and sometimes the reprints use the magazine text, so sometimes like the Ace Books editions, we haven't really, if that's what you read, which I did when I was younger, like Lost on Venus, the text is very different from the text of the ERB Inc. edition, which went back to his manuscript. So ERB didn't have that opportunity with this book because he passed away before it came out in book form. So,
and he didn't finish enough to do a book,
yeah.
Which again was unfortunate for us. But as was pointed out, you just went into the files and found the original typescript,
right?
And the driver was for working the canon for the ERB universe.
Yeah, we're doing both. Well, Cathy, I think, passed out some handouts there, but we're doing a canonical comic book, so expanded canon. So I should just quickly mention the canon. We have started trying to put out the ERB Universe series, which is canonical with Edgar Rice Burroughs, meaning there are many senses of the word canon. I'm using it in the sense of just authorized by the company. So we kind of call it core canon, what Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote, and then expanded canon, what the new writers are writing. And so we're doing expanded canon with the comics. So that's Beyond the Farthest Star, Warriors of Xandar, which I think is out next Wednesday. It hits the stands, the first issue of it. And kind of deep diving into the world building. And then my novel, I did a reading earlier, Victory Harbin Fires of Halos, or Halos, I don't know how ERB pronounced it. Is coming out later next year, hopefully, if I can get it written, because I'm publishing a lot of books for the company, which takes a lot of time. But.
Definitely does. And now, again, the restored edition, which is actually here to buy, some of you may have already bought it, and you have the hardcover as well as.
So we just have the paperback here because
that's right. The hardcover sold out.
Well, no, we had a single hardcover that had come in from our printer, and we're waiting for our bigger shipment. So we just haven't received.
We just got 11 boxes today, so who knows what that.
Yeah, I just got a text.
11 boxes came in, so it's exciting.
And again, Chris has written a foreword that goes into detail about what was excised and the flavor of what was excised, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But Cathy, you have a substantial archive section in the book as well.
Yes.
And of course, all those charts that had the details of the star system and planet are in there on the front end, but the archival material. What did you find, if anything, that suggested how Burroughs thought about the stories that he was writing? If he had anything planned for the future, or was it?
Well, I believe that, look at all the hard work that he put into it. He really took a lot of time to build this world. This was, a new foundation for him to get away from the Tarzan, because he had gotten to a certain point where he was just kind of over that. And so I think he wanted to just start from scratch and just do something really creative and different. And so when we could look at all of the details and all the digging in and all of his drawings, his intricate drawings and whatnot, you're not going to do that just for a one-off.
Yeah.
I think you're going to do that because you have such intention to really grow it, and this could have been his next passion. So that was my interpretation of what we found.
I just based on some of the research material I've seen, I really do believe that Burroughs, this is how he got out of the boredom of just writing the same old stories. It was something new and imaginative and creative, and this thing was way beyond just adding to other stories. You
can see how advanced he was for his time. I mean, he built worlds before that was even a thing, before we even understood that was really a concept. I mean, look at Marvel's taken all of the world building and gone, just made it huge. But Edgar Rice Burroughs did it first, and he did a great job, and this is another example of that.
There's one interesting thing that I found in the correspondence. There's just a handwritten note, and then at the end of the actual manuscript of Tango Returns, I believe it's Tango. Yes, actually, the end of the manuscript of Beyond the Farthest Star, the first part. Actually, I wanted to clarify, when it was published in Blue Book, it was published as Beyond the Farthest Star, not Adventure on Pelota. That was something that Richard Lupoff probably came up with as a part one title, I believe. So, at the end of the manuscript for part one, and I printed that in here. Note: suggested alternative titles. It is war. That's a phrase that echoes throughout the book. It is about it's war. It explains everything because they're just a war-like society. But and then the ghostly script was the other alternative title. So hardcore ERB fans know about that have heard about that manuscript. It's an unpublished manuscript that ERB wrote, which was really about the afterlife, and it was about a black soldier who died in the Spanish-American War at the Battle of San Juan Hill, and then woke up in another world which actually occupied the same space as Earth, but there were 3 suns. And it's a very, very strange manuscript. It's about 7,000 words long. It's clearly meant to be a novel. He actually started it in the 1920s, picked it up almost a decade later, and continued to write it. So it's definitely something that was on his mind to write. And interestingly, that story was told to him through ghostly typewriting, just like the opening of Beyond the Farthest Star, if you've read the opening of the book. And so he was obviously connecting those two ideas, I think. And I thought that was a very fascinating revelation.
It's interesting that people keep saying, well, the problem with the Princes of Mars is that it doesn't explain how he got to Mars. I'm going, do you not understand paranormal and other kinds of approaches, which were very, very much in vogue, by the way. Just ask any Arthur Conan Doyle fan. That was not laughed at the time, and frankly, I think many people don't laugh at it today. But science fiction writers, I guess, get excited about that.
Just one further comment on that. I see the ghostly script. I mean, I know we're talking about this book, but I do believe they're related. I see the ghostly script as a skeleton key to how ERB was thinking about how that worked. He had certain characters like Tangor, Betty Caldwell from the Venus books, Ulysses Paxton, John Carter, who all had this way to project themselves. And I see the ghostly script as like skeleton key to understanding that. He basically sort of explains the pseudoscience behind it in a sort of occult way almost. And that's something that we are incorporating and exploring, I should say, in the new ERB universe books. So, yeah.
I'll tell you that in the years that I've mentioned Beyond the Farthest Star to people, I myself have treated it as something of an anti-war novel, just like I believe Beyond 30 was something of an anti-war novel. But Burroughs was, in fact, especially when he was younger, was all in on military service. He was in on he was a very patriotic person. He was not one of those that was, you call it pacifist in any way. And when I read Beyond the Farthest Star, I kept thinking of it as being him maturing and thinking about war differently. But when you look at some of the revised components and you just read some of the correspondence, I sometimes wonder if it was meant to be anti-war or if it was more about concern of fascist nations at the time as World War II was erupting, and his push for service. Because frankly, especially with the revised components, it looks pretty bleak. I'm curious, Chris, what you think about what Burroughs' ideas may have been when he wrote this story.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Tangor himself is a warrior. He is a fighter pilot, presumably. So he's chosen a war hero, but it is very, very bleak. It's certainly anti-fascist, absolutely. He, goes undercover in the second part to Capara. and it's a very bleak society that he runs into, this totalitarian society that he has to navigate. And so it's like the second part's very much like espionage, war, spy war story. But there is also the element of patriotism, in the face of fighting that. It's hard to say if it's anti-war, but I noticed it as well, and it definitely reads more anti-war with the excise material restored to it. A lot of that was, I believe, you'll read it in my preface if you pick up the book, but I believe that the material was cut because the U.S. was heading into war. This was written in the end of 1940, and I believe that the editor probably thought some of the material, like the cannibalization of the war dead by the enemy and stuff like that, processing as food to feed their war-ravaged peoples, was just too dark for the readership, and the editor probably just didn't want to demoralize the readership in this really tense, scary time. So
I have no doubt about that.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the writing style, to me, it seemed to be terse. The writing structure and the sentence and all were terse. Now, let's not kid ourselves. Burroughs was writing fast. He was getting his stories done. But I thought he cared in particular about getting this right up front, because I thought he was going to write a lot more in it. So I don't know if he went Hemingway on us on purpose, or if he was just trying to speed the writing process. I'm curious what you think about that.
I don't know what the motivation was, but I also wonder if he was updating his style to meet the revised styles of the time, because literature was moving sort of in that direction, really, and it's very simple, clean, quick prose. It still reads really, really well, I think. But you look, he didn't just do that with Beyond the Farthest Star. He did that with, even Skeleton Men of Jupiter is not as ornate as the earlier John Carter books, which are really ornate. That's some of his most ornate language. So I don't know. Even the later Tarzan books, they were all that way. So it's hard to tell whether that was just him trying to get the story done. He's getting older, writing briefer works, but I wonder if he was just updating his style to meet. I don't know how much maybe you have a better idea of how much he was being influenced by other writers at that time. It's not something I've really studied.
I've been very curious about that, even more recently, as to if his style had actually it changed. The fact that he wrote novelettes and had to get in certain word counts, I don't know if that may have influenced it. But he knew he was going to write eventually what looked like novels anyway. So to me, this is an interesting question about whether he had changed his style as a writer.
Well, that's an interesting point, just the idea that he was writing, writing them in novelette form. That, I can, just as a writer myself, I would think that would affect the way that I told the story. And if I was writing these more concise, like a shorter thing, they're generally more concise. And you have to wrap them up. You don't have time to spin the golden prose and go on and on, So I wonder if that had some kind of effect.
It's not the first time that Burroughs would seem to come to a pretty quick conclusion when it looks like he hit his word count. Ironically, Lana Gothal, a war kind of comes and goes in the last 3-4 pages.
Yeah.
But it's otherwise a pretty intricate storyline.
Yeah. He did that in Beyond 32, I thought, wrapped up really fast at the end. There's like a whole world war going on, and it's just, okay, over.
He was so full of ideas in those days, he wanted to move to the next story and make some more money. Those are questions I have. I don't know if you all want to add a little more to the restored edition discussion.
You can see the bullet points here. We got Mark Schultz doing the frontispiece for Zeta cover art, of course. We put the interior illustrations from the Canaveral Press Tales of Three Planets in here. Beautiful. They turned out really, really crisp, too. We also put the earlier Henry had shown the graphics of the solar system and all in the unison script in here and stuff like that ERB had developed. We put those in from the Canaveral Press edition, but we also have ERB's originals. We reprinted those in the back here too, which is really always neat to see what Cathy was talking about earlier. So really proud of this edition. I think we're all really proud of it.
One question that was posed earlier was, can you give us an example of some of the changes or additions or updates?
Yeah, very, very briefly. Like I was saying before, it's a lot about like the really grim horrors of war. There were also some interesting things, like there was a character that Tangor is with another soldier, and they get land on another continent, and they're off on an adventure. And the editor actually cut ERB's humor from it. The other character, like ERB, like Tangor, as he's interacting with this other character, keeps making keeps saying something, and then the guy comes back super pessimistically, and then Tangor just keeps throwing in these lines about, it's just like, this is, the most pessimistic person I've ever met. And then it just keeps going on and on and on. And the editor cut most of those. There's like one or two that he left in, but most of them are cut. But it's actually really humorous when you read it. I thought it was funny. I enjoy, I don't like the fact that was cut, so I obviously put that back in. There was some interesting references to some things going on at the time. A lot of references to various gangs and corruption and stuff like that going on. And there's a political reference to Frank Hague, is it Hague? Frank Hague, I don't know how to pronounce it, but of New Jersey, but a prominent politician who was known for being corrupt. In fact, they later, after he died, found his desk, and it had a drawer in it where people could pass money, bribes through it. And so ERB was digging him in it, and all that got cut, like those timely references and all. So that was interesting, but some of the material was cut.
Interesting. Again, when you see the follow-up, it really does. To me, it's just a better storyline.
Yeah.
We have maybe no more time left. Not even for one question. One question. Short question. Anyone? Yes.
Is there any sort of recorded opinion from ERB on these sorts of edits? Like, did he just consider this business, or was he frustrated with sort of thing?
Well, in this instance, we don't know. Ralph Rothman, his secretary, sold this story, and all the correspondence that I saw with the editor was between Ralph Rothman and the editor, which it was Donald Kennicott. Whether Donald Kennicott actually did the hands-on edits, I don't know, but I would assume he did. Longtime editor for ERB, but I don't know. But generally speaking, he didn't like it. He did not like to be edited. He did not like it. So I feel very confident in restoring this.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure if Burroughs got a chance to see some of the pulps out in Hawaii, and so he may not have had a chance to even look at these and go,
Yeah.
Because Rothman did do most of the day-to-day.
Yeah.
But I can, as Chris said, sometimes he just tolerated to get it out and get his paycheck because he knew he could restore it later.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of times he complained pretty bitterly when he saw what the editors had done.
Yeah.
On some of the magazines. All right, that's a great question, and I think that wraps us up for this short panel. And we'll, Cathy and Chris will take charge of the next panel in a few minutes. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to a Pulp Event podcast, brought to you by the PulpNet, your link to the online world of the pulp magazines for over 25 years. Please visit us online at thepulp.net. Also, look for the PulpNet on Facebook and on Twitter. Thank you for listening, and keep reading the pulps. The Pulp Event podcast is copyright 2021.